They call Filipinos natural caregivers. You've heard that before. Maybe someone said it to you. Maybe you've said it yourself. It sounds nice. It sounds like a compliment. It's not. It's a cover story. And once you know what it's actually covering, you can't unhear it. Here's a fact most people don't know. The Philippines is the single largest source of foreign nurses in the United States. Not one of the largest. The largest. More Filipino nurses in American hospitals than any other nationality. And it's not even close. Same story in the UK, same story in the Middle East, same story in Ireland, Canada, Australia. Everywhere in the world there's a hospital bed that needs filling, there's a Filipino nurse filling it. And when people ask why, the answer they always give is culture. Filipinos are warm. Filipinos are compassionate. Filipinos are natural caregivers. It just comes naturally to them. No, that's not what happened. What happened is much more interesting and much more uncomfortable. Let's go back to 1898. America just won the Spanish-American War. Spain hands over the Philippines for $20 million. $20 million for an entire country. And suddenly America is running a tropical archipelago of 7,000 islands on the other side of the world that they knew almost nothing about. So what do colonial powers do when they take over somewhere? They build systems, schools, courts, hospitals, roads, not out of kindness, out of control. Systems are how you manage a population. Systems are how you create dependence. Systems are how you make sure that even after you leave, the place still runs the way you built it. The Americans built schools across the Philippines, English schools, American curriculum, American teachers. Some of those teachers were literally shipped over from the United States on boats. They were called the Thomasites, regular American teachers put on a ship, sent to the Philippines to teach Filipinos to think, speak, and learn the American way. And inside those schools, they built nursing programs. Not Filipino nursing programs, American nursing programs. Same curriculum as back home, same standards, same certification. Why? Because American hospitals in the Philippines needed nurses who met American requirements. That was the whole reason. Nothing more complicated than that. But here's where it gets interesting. Those nursing schools didn't close when America left. The Philippines became independent in 1946. The Americans packed up and went home. But the schools stayed. The curriculum stayed. The certification standards stayed. Everything the colonial period built just kept running. Now jump to the 1960s. America is booming. Hospitals everywhere are expanding fast. And they have a problem. They don't have enough nurses, so they start looking globally. Which foreign-trained nurses can legally work in American hospitals? Which ones already meet American standards? Which ones already speak English? And one country keeps coming up. Every single time. The Philippines. Because Filipino nurses weren't just English speakers. They were trained in English. They weren't just familiar with American healthcare. They were certified in American healthcare. From schools that had been built 60 years earlier by Americans for exactly this purpose. The system worked perfectly, just not for the reason anyone admitted. The migration started slow, then it exploded. Filipino nurses in New York, in California, in Chicago and Texas and Florida. Then the UK called. The NHS needed nurses. Same story. Filipino nurses already had the training, already had the credentials. The NHS started recruiting directly in the Philippines. Then Saudi Arabia called. Then the UAE. Then Kuwait. Every healthcare system that needed nurses fast called the Philippines. Because the Philippines always had them ready. And then the Philippine government noticed something. The money these nurses were sending home? It was significant. Families were being lifted. Communities were being stabilized. Houses were being built. Kids were going to school. All from remittances. And the Marcos government in the 1970s had a thought. What if this wasn't just something that happened? What if this was policy? What if we deliberately trained workers for export? What if we built the whole economy around people leaving? That became the OFW program, Overseas Filipino Workers, a formal government system for labor export, funded, managed, institutionalized. The Philippines wasn't accidentally becoming the world's nurse supplier. It was deliberately becoming the world's nurse supplier. I need you to sit with that for a second, because this is where it gets genuinely uncomfortable. A colonial power builds nursing schools in your country, for their hospitals. Using their standards, you become independent. The schools stay. The standards stay. Decades later, your own government looks at what colonialism built and turns it into a product, takes the infrastructure that was designed to extract from the Philippines and uses it to extract remittances from richer countries instead. Is that smart? Yes. Should it make you angry? Also yes. Both things at the same time. Because Filipino families didn't build this system. They just figured out how to survive inside it. They found the door that was open, and they walked through it, generation after generation after generation. Let's look at the numbers for a second. Over 150,000 Filipino nurses work in the United States right now. The Philippines sends more nurses abroad than any other country on earth. Remittances from all overseas Filipino workers. Nurses being a huge part of that account for around 9 to 10% of Philippine GDP, 9 to 10% of the entire economy, built on people who had to leave to survive. But here's the number that doesn't get talked about. Philippine hospitals are understaffed. Severely. Not because the Philippines doesn't train nurses. It trains enormous numbers of nurses. More than enough. But the wages at home can't compete with what those nurses earn abroad. So they leave. And Filipino communities, in a country of 115 million people, are left with hospitals that don't have enough staff. The same pipeline generating 10% of GDP is the same pipeline draining healthcare workers from Filipino communities. Same system, same time, generating the money, creating the shortage, and then COVID hit, and suddenly this contradiction was impossible to ignore. Filipino nurses were dying on front lines in New York, in London, in Riyadh, at documented, reported, alarming rates. While the Philippines, the country producing all of these nurses, was managing its own pandemic with a healthcare system that had been exporting its workforce for 50 years. The countries receiving Filipino nurses were better staffed. The country producing them was not. I want to make this personal for a second. Because behind every statistic is a real person. A nurse in Cebu in 1968, looking at what she earns at home, looking at what she could earn in California, thinking about her kids, her parents, her brothers and sisters, making a decision, getting on a plane, sending money home every month. That one decision multiplied by hundreds of thousands of people is what built the Filipino nursing diaspora. Not government policy alone, not colonial history alone. Real people, finding the best option available, and taking it, even when the best option meant leaving everything behind. So the next time someone says, Filipinos are natural caregivers, I want you to remember this. Filipino nurses are exceptional. Genuinely, documented, celebrated by every healthcare system that employs them, but exceptional because of training. Because of generations of investment in nursing education, because of programs built, however they were originally motivated, that produced real skill and real professionalism. That's not natural, that's built. And the people who built it first built it for themselves, not for Filipino families. Filipino families just figured out how to turn it into survival. Here's where things stand right now. The Philippines is still the largest source of foreign nurses in the United States. The OFW program is still running. Nursing schools are still producing graduates tracked for international deployment. Western healthcare systems are still dependent on Filipino nurses in ways that would cause genuine crisis if that pipeline stopped tomorrow. And Philippine hospitals are still understaffed. The system built during the American colonial period is still running in 2024, more than 120 years after it started, still extracting, still generating, still creating the shortage it was never designed to fix. When you see a Filipino nurse in a New York hospital, in an NHS ward, in a clinic in Dubai, You are looking at more than 120 years of history, colonial policy, independence, economic pressure, government decisions, individual sacrifice, all of it, leading to that one person in that one hospital, doing that work with those skills. That didn't happen naturally. That was built by people who weren't building it for Filipino families. And Filipino families made it their own anyway. That's the real story. Subscribe if you want more of this. The real history, the systems behind the stories, the things they left out of the textbook, new video every week, and drop a comment. Are you a nurse? Do you have a nurse in your family? Tell me where you are in this story, because this story is still being written by Filipino nurses in hospitals around the world right now.